So, this is a very powerful thing when the people who are in the way of your country, right at the founding of your country, you define them as criminals. And so this idea that whoever is in the way of Americans' expansion is a criminal, I mean, that's a very convenient way to deal with the world, right? If you're against us, you're a criminal. Like, you go to the Cold War, I mean, there was no trial to say Masada in Iran has to go because he wants to nationalize oil, or Arbenz in Guatemala has to go because he wants to do land reform, or Lumumba in Congo has to go. Some secret group say that's a communist. That's it. No legal procedures need apply. And of course, communists, what does that mean? I think it means any indigenous people saying we want control of our natural resources. I think that in Iraq in 1958, the government that took control of Iraq and broke out of the British Empire started to create the New Deal. They started to create like unemployment insurance. How are they going to pay for it? So they said to the foreign oil producers in their country, we want 20%. We want 20% of our oil in our country. And of course they freaked out. So in 1972, they actually nationalized oil. And that had huge implications. Even Saudi Arabia sort of copied them. So Iraq, our indigenous peoples, like they've had governments, yes, dictatorships, yes, ruthless people in charge who, if you oppose them, would put you in jail and torture you. And on the other hand, they built health care. They used the money to build up the infrastructure. Apparently, if you were a teacher in Iran in the late 70s, you could go on a holiday in Europe, and it was starting to happen. Like Iraq is a very they were using the wealth to build up the country. That is a sort of a forbidden idea, and I can't help thinking, well, it's a similar concept to criminalizing the indigenous peoples at the very beginning of your country. So so the rule of law and the nature of sovereignty. So the United States is founded on these principles, and there are some great ideas, and there is some authentic effort to liberate humanity. I mean, but underneath it is this economic imperative. The British Empire is not cooperating in Western expansion as fast as the land speculators would like to go. And so pull away the British imperial structure. And isn't it interesting? I mean, this is our revolution. The American Revolution, we're the other side of it. There were those who opposed the American Revolution. There were those who said, well, actually, we think the monarchy and the British Empire is a better system. And interestingly, among the people who said that were quite often minorities. The Anabaptists, the people we call Mennonites, and as I understand it, the Hutterites are kind of an extreme version of Anabaptists. So the Mennonites from Pennsylvania, I mean, they tended to say, well, we're a minority. This idea of founding a country based on the will of the majority, that's fine if you're part of the majority population. But what if you're not? What if your people are in a minority position? So the Indians tended to stay with King George. The Indians tended to say, okay, this royal proclamation, we'll live within that framework rather than the framework of the United States, where we're defined as merciless Indian savages who are, sort of criminalized right off the bat. Interestingly, a lot of black slaves, fight the United States, come to British North America. So, this imagery of the United States as, containing and embodying all the great democratic theory and being this guiding light. I like to say, well, I think we did all right here in Canada. Like, it's not perfect, but I wonder if I was in the United States, could I be giving this class? Could I be developing this interpretation? I feel quite secure here. I feel quite respected in this community. And in the United States right now, there's possibilities of real abuses. Because once you get this idea that all it takes to be put outside the law is for some official, somebody in a police capacity, to say, "I think you're going to cheat," you're expelled, and you're good. I mean that's "I think you might be this. Go to Guantanamo Bay, and we'll work on it for 5 years to see. We won't tell your family." Nobody around you will be informed where you are, what happened. You won't be charged with anything. You'll just be dropped there. So the rule of law and the uses and abuses of sovereignty, the notion of sovereignty remaining in some kind of figurehead, sovereignty being taken away from that figurehead and invested in the people. But then, what is the people? What about when corporations, these huge conglomerations of wealth, take on the personality of persons, of legal persons? This only happened since the 1880s, the Santa Clara Railway case. So I hope you find this useful. I've tried to explain, Elizabeth I to Elizabeth II. I've tried to give you some idea of how Dwight Eisenhower, from within the military, somebody who was right inside the military-industrial complex, couldn't be more integral to the military-industrial complex. Himself, worried, menaced, feels that this is a danger, and I think that the caution that he was the alert that he was trying to send us, I think it's very relevant right now, and I think there's a lot to say that this military-industrial complex, this elite within the nation of the United States, in fact, the caution, the fears that motivated him to say those things in 1960 now are coming to fruition, now seem to be in operation. And I'll just finish it by, if you just look at the history of these individuals, but especially him, the former CEO of Halliburton, and the fact that oil and gas, the oil industry, I've got to finish this, but you start to lay out these connections. I mean, the oil industry in the United States, it starts with Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller, and his whole technique is to do monopoly. And by the early 20th century, he has taken over every competitor. So the whole strategy is to get rid of competition. Capitalism is ideally about competition. And you could say, if you can do something more efficiently with energy, you should do it. That's the capitalist dynamic. But this oil and gas becomes a monopoly. You can purchase political influence. You want to stop change, so the dynamics of oil and gas. Then they break it up in 1911. It's a monopoly. They break it up, but now it's like Chevron, Mobil, like all of these companies. They all go back to Rockefeller's company, And of course, Rockefeller, that industry was well involved with the Nazis. I mean, the oil and gas was on both sides of World War II. The military-industrial complex, it comes out of the Nazi military-industrial complex and the other military-industrial complex. It draws on both those traditions. So, this idea that there's a power greater than the formal sovereignty, that the rule of law is being subjected to new kinds of pressures, new kinds of monopolies that don't respect the rule of law, that are sort of above the law. Even Kofi Annan is publicly, the Secretary General of the United Nations is putting out the alert. So I'll see you in 10 minutes or so, 10 or 15 minutes or so.